Starting the formal broadcast of welcoming people from the webinar into the room. And I'm very, very happy that I and Uday is an alumnus of SOIL from our very first batch. And, he's just by coincidence, he's also a telecom engineer. So he grew up, with the stories of Mr. Sam Pitroda and what he did to this country, which I don't think anyone else has done in one sector as much as what Sam's presence has meant to India. So it's an absolute, very joyful. And I just want to say one thing to Sam. As a young man, Arun Myra knows that because I worked with him in Tata's. I had dreamt of first working in industry and then creating a think tank to contribute to the economic development of our country. But in one function, I remember Ghaziabad Management Association, Sam was the chief guest. I was one of the speakers and I was sitting next to him and I talked to him about this idea. And he said, Anil, don't create think tanks which do not charge people for their professional services. People don't respect just think tank. You should be converting that into a consulting company. So I want to thank you because it gave my career and we, a whole new life. And we created something called Aisha Consultancy and did all kinds of wonderful things. So I just want to thank you. You probably don't realize it, but you have played a very important role in my life, including I remember bringing Sumantro Ghoshal to meet you, in INSEAD, and then you got us involved in those technology missions. So many things to say, Sam. So I'm excited like a little kid in a candy shop to say, how nice to have you here with us.
Thank you, Anil. Thanks for your very generous comments. I'm indeed delighted to be with you and your colleague.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Uday, how does it feel to be in Sam's presence for you?
Well, this is, as I say, this is an honor. And as you also put it, being a telecom engineer, having worked in wireless connectivity and having worked on 3G protocol stacks, this is Sam's language. So I was probably part of the very first two teams to work on 3G protocol stacks in India, even though for international companies. But this is surreal for me, and I'm thankful for SOIL to bringing me over here with Sam. Thank you.
Thank you, Uday. Thank you again for your very generous comments.
Thank you. So, Sam, out of all the wonderful things that have happened in your life, I want to first ask you your life story. Who were the people in the early part of your life who inspired you, influenced you, and shaped you in ways that you are who you are today? Could you tell us about that?
Well, let me start with my family.
Yes.
I was born and raised in a small little tribal village in Orissa. My father had 4th grade education. He went from Gujarat to Orissa looking for work in 30s. But he was a man with character. In those days, taking care of children, taking care of family was the main priority for them. We were 8 brothers and sisters. We lived in an area where there were, poor people. In front of us was a Muslim family. Next to us was a Sikh family, Oriya family, Marwari family. And I was born in British India in 1942. So during independence, the mood was very different. There was a mood of excitement, empowerment. And my father, after independence, felt empowered that now I can also send my children to English schools and colleges and all that. Role model in the family were hanging on the wall in the front room. We had a small house with 4 rooms. And those role models were represented in terms of big pictures hanging right on the wall. Gandhiji, Nehru, Patel, Subhash Chandra Bose, and Maulana Azad. So as little children growing up, we always looked at those pictures. I remember the day Gandhiji died. And after Sardar Patel died, my parents decided to send us to a boarding school in Gujarat because there were no schools in that village. And my parents wanted us to learn Gujarati. So our role model were sort of embedded in Indian independence movement, the idea of India, democracy, freedom, equality, justice. Not that we understood a lot of it at that age. So when we went to boarding school in Gujarat, that boarding school was next to Sardar Patel's village. And we basically learned Gandhian way of life, discipline, truth, trust, love. Didn't realize that we were being molded by these things until we grew up. We assumed that this is the way it has to be. Had no idea of anything else. Okay. Then I did my master's in physics in Baroda. Then decided to come to America in 1964. So I've been in US for 55 years. Came to get a PhD in physics. But when I found out that my professor told me that it takes 7 years to get a PhD, and I had a girlfriend in India, so I decided to change to electrical engineering. Studied here, called my girlfriend, got married, and started my life here. So going back to your original question, I would say I really didn't have somebody close in the family or friends who was really a role model, because we were sort of, in the family, nobody was studying. Nobody had ever had school education. Forget about college education. So our role model became Gandhiji and independence movement heroes, unconsciously. And then when I got into physics, my role model became Einstein. I was fascinated with a man who could just take paper and pencil and imagine things that nobody could prove then and turned out to be a reality. I said, these are the two greatest men ever lived. One understood people, poverty, grassroots level needs, and he could galvanize millions by picking a pinch of salt. Another one, without any instrumentation, with paper and pencil, could see things nobody could see. So I said, how powerful these people are. And there's no need to learn from anybody else, in a sense. Again, these were not very conscious, concepts. It just happened. And you saw it and you get fascinated with these two when you think of them. Okay. And those two became sort of my role models. Every time in life, when I had crisis, I would ask, what would Gandhiji do? How would Einstein imagine these things? And that gives me comfort, answers of my own. So I've continued on that path. My mother gave us values, freedom, love. Okay, my brothers and sisters gave me sense of sharing, caring. So a lot of these things add up. My friends, I have the best friends in the world. They are just great. Okay. So you're a product of your environment. And I happen to be lucky, I would say.
Thank you, Sam. What an inspiring story that is. And tell us about the journey of you then in Chicago and, doing something very special. And, we heard stories about you before you came to India as to how you had invented things, how you had become an entrepreneur. Can you share something about that journey?
Sure. Again, by accident, I got into telecom in 1965. When I graduated with a degree in electrical engineering, for a while I worked in nuclear instruments. Because I had a degree in physics, I had a degree in electrical engineering. So common sense in those days said, hey, you got to be in nuclear instruments. And then company decided to move from Chicago to Cleveland. I didn't want to go to Cleveland because I had all the friends in Chicago. My wife and I felt this is our home. So by accident, I got a job in telecom. And that took me on a different path. There was no strategy, there was no wisdom, there was no understanding of anything. Okay. And that also, by accident, I got into a group working on digital switching in 1965. Again, an accident. There were only 4 people working on it, and I happened to be the 4th guy. And those were very early days of digital technology. In 68, 69, I remember working on picture phone, on display with sort of a flat panel. Okay, and I was going to file a patent on sort of having 3 different holes and putting gas in and firing it and all that kind of stuff. So I got to be, by chance, in the areas where things were just happening. It was the bleeding edge technology then. So everything we did turned out to be patentable. Okay. And in the group, I was the physicist with electrical engineering. Others were software, hardware guys. So I had a different view. Okay. So every time people will do something, I would think a little differently. Again, based on my background, my culture, and people would appreciate saying, hey, that's an interesting idea. So then I realized that, oh, there's an invention. Okay. And I got a lot of patents. I got about 30 patents. And then I said, hey, it is better to go on your own, because every year you'll get a patent award, $100, and everybody will clap and there'll be a big dinner and all that. And after a while, I got tired of those patent awards. Every year you'll be there with everybody, and you'll have some more patents, and people will say, oh, Sam, great thing, and then nothing will happen. Okay. Then my father was visiting in those days, and he kept saying, you should quit and do your own thing. And he didn't know what it was. He had no idea. I mean, I remember taking him to my company once, and his idea of company was that there'll be machines and factories and steam coming out, and they were all sitting with paper and pencil designing software. And he said, this looks like a library. So I think ignorance is a great asset. If I would have known all the difficulties I would have in doing things I did, I would have never done it. I mean, coming to India and taking on telecom, if I had known all the sort of complexity and bureaucracy, I would have never tried it. I did it because I was ignorant. So I've learned one lesson, that ignorance is a great asset.
Wonderful.
You have to know how to use it.
Wonderful.
So then I started the company in Chicago with 2 American friends who had the money. And I was young, hardworking, sincere, honest, to the core, discipline. And it paid off. All the things I had learned from Gandhian lifestyle paid off. And then I started understanding what these things meant. Then I started realizing that what I learned in the childhood, truth, trust, loving my janitor, it was a big thing. I had an African-American janitor, and I was the managing director of the company, and he took great pride in the fact that the boss is brown. And every morning when I go to work, he would be hanging there sweeping floor, and I would hug him. And that sent wild signals in the company. in those days. This was 74. I did it, just because this was a normal Gandhian thing to do. Okay. And then I realized that, wow, these things have huge impact because I'm empowering this whole generation of Black people in the company. Okay. I had no idea. I was doing what Gandhiji would do. Okay. I would ask them how is family. I would ask them what is happening and, all these simple things. And I had a flat organization. So all the things people talk about management today in terms of, hierarchical architecture versus egalitarian architecture, team building, all that we did it. I practiced it without knowing what these things meant because it was Gandhian thing to do. Okay, if somebody was sick, I would call him and say, stay home, how is your wife, all this stuff. It was not a management or HR lesson that I had learned, okay, or some technique, okay. And I realized that these things matter in life. So Gandhi remained my inspiration all my life.
How wonderful. And then the moment when you had achieved a name, you had made money, you had done all that, and then Rajiv Gandhi invited you. Can you talk to us about that moment and how that was? And then how did you come to India and your early years here then?
Again, by accident, life takes you to different path. A lot of strategy and planning that you learn in business schools and all is nice, but accidents make things happen. Okay, you meet people, you see things, and boom, everything changes. Okay, so I tried to make a phone. No, after I made money, I decided to go to India to take my parents to see Taj Mahal. And I tried to make a phone call to my wife. This was 1980. And I could not make a phone call. And a little bit of arrogance and a lot of ignorance said, I'm going to fix this. If I had known everything I know about India today, I would have never even tried it. Okay. So I told my wife that I'm going to spend next 10 years of my life in fixing India's telephone because I believe connectivity, software, IT will change the face of India. And I requested for a meeting with Indira Gandhi. After some 8 months of delay, I got a meeting. And that's when I met Rajiv Gandhi for the first time. And we were just about same age, couple of years difference. And we clicked. I saw in the man a spark, enthusiasm, youth, clarity, vision, and honesty. And when Mrs. Indira Gandhi died, he and I met in his house in January of 85. And I decided to come back for good, lock, stock, and barrel. Moved my family, ultimately changed my nationality back to Indian. And he gave me meaning to my life. He provided political will to do the things that needed to be done. I get a lot of credit, but in reality, there are two other elements that people don't realize were a very important part of this success in telecom. One was political will from Rajiv Gandhi. And second one was young talent from IITs and IIMs and other universities. And their energy, their love, their support was so very important. And they really made it happen. And a lot of the management style that I brought back from US, sometimes credit goes to US, but I think credit goes to Gandhiji. Okay. All the things people say, oh, it was a great management style Sam had. He was a very sort of flat organization. You could go into his office anytime, this, that. And in modern management term, that was Silicon Valley that they use now. And it was very Gandhian. Okay.
Yeah, that's where I first met you. And, thanks to dear friends like Shoman Chakrabarti and Adesh Goyal and Mandana and Indira Sood, Vimal Sood, many of them I think are
kids, they're
yes,
all wonderful human beings.
yes,
They made
and
it happen.
yes, I think some of them are probably part of this webinar today. So that's how I first met you.
Yeah.
And I was so excited because I used to head HR for the Aisha group those days, and I went there to meet you in your office. And I could literally see people working 24/7 with a broad smile on their face, literally sleeping in that building you had next to Chanakyapuri.
Absolutely. People don't understand. They think it is Silicon Valley culture.
Yeah.
We did that in 80s.
Yes. That was really special. I have never, ever seen such a thing in my life. How you built an innovative, high-performance organization. And that's how the telecom revolution started, all those young people who worked with you.
Absolutely.
That was something very, very
People
special.
don't remember these things. They have no idea.
That was very special.
They cannot comprehend, what it means.
Yeah. So tell us a bit more about how was the journey like of creating that sense of excitement and vision. Can you talk to us a few things about that?
Well, it became a mission in life. It became a mission to really build telecom and IT infrastructure for India. And for that, you really needed human capacity. And a lot of these young people became the foundation of the human capacity. Okay. They became the leaders of tomorrow. They learned how to get things done. They were energized, motivated. They were protected in many ways. Okay. And they had a clarity of mission. Mission was indigenous development, made in India. Then it was more important than now. Then rural development, so rural telecom, local infrastructure, ancillary industry, local production, licenses to L&T and Tata and Mahindras and everybody to produce, and privatization of telecom. We started the process of privatization of telecom. So we laid the groundwork for the next 25 years. I mean, people don't realize that in 85, we were talking about, 16-bit microprocessors, C language for programming, Unix. Okay, this was, almost 35 years ago. Okay. And these young kids were working on C language programming and Unix. Okay. And that gave birth to our software industry in many ways. And then private industry joined and private entrepreneur joined and the movement started because everybody felt, hey, we can do it. Okay. Otherwise, it would have never happened. Then we were producing zero software export. Today we do, I'm told, close to 200 billion a year. Then we had 2 million telephones. Today we have 1.2 billion phones. People don't realize how it happened. And then we took that idea of technology and started technology missions for immunization. We eradicated polio, not because there were fancy ads on TV, but because Rajiv Gandhi decided and backed us up in setting up a vaccine plant. Then we did not produce any vaccine in India. Today we are the largest producer of vaccine in the world. We had technology mission on milk. We are the largest producer of milk today in the world. All of these things happen with a lot of groundwork, lot of clarity, political will, local talent. People don't understand that. And then some people turn around and say, oh, nothing got done in 40 years. I feel sorry for them. They are so ignorant. They are so naive.
Absolutely.
But people buy it. Yeah. People buy it. What do you do?
Because I remember some of us volunteers had created a group to assist the government, and you put us in touch with so many wonderful people, Mr. Shenoy and the oil seeds technology mission, Professor Veer Raghavan in the Planning Commission.
Great people.
And wonderful people, So we had an opportunity to serve, and it was such a
Dr.
wonderful
Pinoy
idea.
was such a wonderful human being.
Yeah, what a wonderful person he was. That's absolutely. And and they welcomed ideas from us who were the private sector people who wanted to serve and volunteer, and we would sit in some of their meetings.
So
it was
that was a different time.
Yes.
You could have a conversation. It was open conversation. It was respect for other human beings. Nobody asked you, what is your religion? What do you believe in? Do you eat beef or don't eat beef? You cannot build a nation by dividing people.
Yes.
You got to build a nation by taking everybody with you.
Yes, absolutely.
Which brings me. You got to have freedom to say things.
You have to have.
It's okay for you to say, Sam, you don't make sense. It's perfectly okay.
Yes.
Because I cannot make sense every day.
Sure. Absolutely. And Sam, which is what brings me to the most critical topic now. I know that given the power of your own, I would say, intellectual capacity, along with Gandhian values, I'm sure you have something very original to say about the COVID crisis and what are you sourcing as insights on how we need to take on this huge challenge that humanity is facing. So tell us about that.
Well, thank you for asking, Anil. I have been locked up in my house for the last 8 months. Now, when people say I'm locked up, they still go out. But my wife and I have not left my house.
Wow.
8 months, not been outside the house, except mailbox.
Wow.
Because our children said, you both have conditions. I had 2 quadruple bypasses, I had cancer. My wife had, cancer. But we are very healthy. And they said, don't go out. So they call almost every day and say, have you been out? And we have to report to them.
Yes.
So we don't go out. Okay. So while being locked up in the house for 8 months, somebody delivers all the groceries. I have 5 cars. I've never driven any for 8 months. Okay. I started thinking. And I realized that this little coronavirus has put this world on pause. Never, ever anything like this happened in my lifetime or earlier that I know of, where the entire world was on pause. And it told me basically that there are 2 things that matter in life. Only 2. Our planet and our people. There is no third thing. We all came here with nothing. We are all going back with nothing. Everything else is illusion. So I said, why haven't we really focused on these 2? And why are you look at newspaper every day and it's about markets, money, efficiency, productivity, technology, sales. No one talks about planet and people. And the people things you talk about is inequality, is Black Lives Matter, is hunger, poverty. So I started thinking about these things a little bit, because I had some free time. And I decided to write a book on redesigning the world. And this has been going on in my mind for many years, but this forced me to take action. Okay. I just finished the first draft. I realized that the world was last designed after World War II, led by America, which gave birth to UN, World Bank, NATO, IMF, WTO, GDP, GNP, per capita income, all that stuff. And that worked well for 75 years. It helped us manage peace. It sort of created, prosperity for a large number of people. It lifted billions out of poverty. This design had 5 main things: democracy, human rights, capitalism, consumption, and military. Consumption was the key part then because economy had to be built. Europe had to be built, Japan had to be built. But then consumption took us in a direction where inequality increased world over. Very few people control most of the wealth in the world. A large number of people don't have enough to eat. So then comes hyperconnectivity. Internet, mobile phones, web changes everything. It changes our work, it changes our interaction, it changes family relationship, it changes, entertainment, trade, finance, you name it. There is nothing, not a thing that doesn't get affected because of hyperconnectivity. So hyperconnectivity brings about democratization of information, decentralization of decision making, and demonetization of services. Education could be cheap if it is like this. Okay. So I realized that hyper-connected world needs a new design. So I started thinking about what is the new design, and I've written a book on this. So that's how I use this time. And going back to your original question, world will change. We cannot go back to what it was. We have to again think about what is good for the planet and what is good for people. Those are two things. It is not what is good for me, because if everything is good for me and it is bad for everybody else, I can't survive in the long run. So it has to be good for everybody. My neighbor, my children, my town, my district. Okay. If it is just good for me, I'll stick like a sore thumb. Okay. So I think, again, going back to Gandhian ideas, and my friend Arun Maira talks a great deal about it, is that small is beautiful. To scale, we don't need big factories. We can network. We need localization, not just globalization. But localization doesn't mean globalization is not important. We need to push decision-making down district level, even below. We don't need authoritarian strong leaders. It's a wrong idea. They are counterproductive. They do things for themselves, not for people. Okay. We need to elect people with character. This is not a debating society where you elect somebody because he gives a good speech, or he makes false promises, or he lies to people. You need people with character, people with education, experience. I know people criticize sometimes Nehru and Nehruian ideology and all that. And I tell them, I said, have you ever read a book called Discovery of India? That man wrote that book in a jail, in prison, without access to Google, without access to library. Look at the capacity of that man. You can't even write 3 paragraphs like this. And you want to criticize Nehru? Who are you? Okay, can you write 2 pages like that? No. So I think character matters, capabilities matter. And we have lost that.
Yeah.
And I think,
in fact, I
think the Corona crisis teaches you all this stuff again.
Absolutely. That's why we are so blessed that in our school, the vision is to help building leaders with strong character and whole systems thinking and the enthusiasm to make a difference. So you are absolutely right. That's what we are inspired by. And Uday Gosain, the first alumnus of, the first batch of Soil. Uday, now it's over to you to start sourcing questions from the chat box and also from the Q&A to ask Sam. So I'm now going to enjoy and celebrate Uday's, interaction with Sam. So thank you.
Thank you, Uday. Thank you. Thanks for hosting this, Uday.
Thanks a lot. As I said, I've been fortunate to be to have worked in the telecom sector, and today I work in IoT, building an IoT platform for one of our global companies. It's going to be deployed in about 200 countries. So leading that effort now. So from wireless to IoT, the application of wireless now at a different level. So I'm quite honored to be here, being able to talk to you and bring the questions of so many others. So there are a few questions, and the first one goes like this: that in the COVID situation, how does India bridges the digital divide, especially for education, which has become so much more important today? What are your thoughts around that?
Well, first of all, we are not prepared for digital education infrastructure and institutions. During Dr. Manmohan Singh's time, we initiated two major projects. One was National Knowledge Network to connect 1100 nodes with 4 gigabit bandwidth to connect all our universities, libraries, and R&D institutions. So first task is to connect all our education institutions to that infrastructure. Infrastructure is ready, but universities are not ready to really use it effectively. Some are using it. Two, we decided to connect 250,000 panchayats to optical fiber to take hundreds of megabits of bandwidth to rural India. That program has been launched, not completely done yet. So the infrastructure, not only hardware, but also software content. You cannot just videotape a lecture and show it and say it is digital. You need platform and interactivity and all kinds of tools. So India is not ready. Maybe 20% is ready, but majority of India is not ready for digital infrastructure. I think digital education is the key going forward because it will democratize education. It will demonetize education. And it will decentralize the process. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. Today,
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, do that, please.
So there are some more questions around the same topic, that how do you further the connectivity? So I think first is the infrastructure that you mentioned started back then. But today, taking advantage of 4G and the advent of 5G, which the world is now talking about, how does India need to leverage this opportunity, make some policy decisions, and cover the country to provide these over-the-top?
First is you need to build the infrastructure, whether it is 4G or 5G or even 3G. Okay, you got to also create devices. You got to have in your hand a device which has some interactivity. So one is the infrastructure, and that is fiber and 3G, 4G, 5G, all that, and the device. And then comes the content. See, there is a lot of content, but we don't have curation. The most important thing about content is curation. We don't need more content. We need better curation. Plus, in digital technology, you need to turn things upside down. You don't need teacher to deliver lectures. You don't need to go to classroom to listen to lectures. You need to stay home to listen to lectures. And you need to go to classroom to do your homework. So you got to flip your concept of class. Okay. Today we go to school to listen to lecture and come home to do our homework. I would call it classwork. Okay.
Very interesting thought there. Yeah.
And then I don't want teacher to be delivering lectures. I want teacher to be a mentor. But none of these teachers are trained to be mentors. They are all trained to deliver lectures. So you have this huge vacuum. How do you become mentor from teacher? What does mentor mean? What is the psychological makeup of a mentor? Okay. Teacher can be irritating and still give a good lecture, but teacher cannot be irritating and still be a good mentor.
And I think that is how soil nurtures us and builds, as Anil ji said, builds our character. And,
I think there are huge.
And he's focused on mentoring. I mean, yeah, I think that is.
So there are big issues, and no one is thinking through this properly.
Yeah. And Uday, when you read out the questions, please do read out the name of the person. That would be also nice. Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. So there's a question from Amit Nima, who also mentions that does 5G pose environmental hazards to our planet and people?
I don't think so.
Okay. Then there is another question from Shivani Bhatnagar, who would want to know what are the key elements that you have seen that pushes people to drive and deliver beyond what they probably can?
And she's a soil student currently studying. Yeah, go ahead.
Basically, you got to do your work with dedication, commitment, care, concern. And if you just do your work, you will deliver. You know, some people deliver more because they are more careful and more committed. And some people deliver less because they are less committed and less careful. It's not a rocket science, you know.
Yeah.
So an interesting question again so India has Sam Pitroda, Sundar Pichai, Satya Nadella, and many more. Why is their discovery done in the US and not back in India?
I think it's a part of ecosystem. Okay. You need, according to me, thriving democracy that you have in US. You have seen it during this election to some extent. You need that freedom of speech. You need that freedom of mobility. You need that little pressure on equality, okay, openness, transparency. It is that culture, okay. Our society is still feudal and hierarchical. When we come here, we find that it is more egalitarian. It's a degree of it, okay. And people feel empowered. They experience freedom, okay. In India, you don't experience freedom, okay. And if you don't experience freedom, best in you don't come out, okay. To empower people, you need to release freedom. And I think a lot of people don't understand these things, okay. And they want to worship, you know, tough leaders and this and that. They're all crazy, okay. And it bothers me a lot. But what can you do, you know?
I think there is a change in the world about on this subject. This subject is of a longer debate as such. What's happening today and the fact that we are not able to express freely and be devoid of any fear while taking actions.
Exactly.
So over to another question from Narendra Paul, who works with an organization called CORD, and they work to empower rural youth. They would want to know
CORD very well.
Right. So what would your message be for the people who work for CORD, wanting to bring rural transformation in India? How do they stay focused while these forces work to, opposite to their mission at times?
I think, first of all, I don't have answer to everything. So let's start with that. Okay, I'm not an expert on sociology, psychology, philosophy, anthropology, economy. No, I'm just an ordinary guy who has some strange ideas. Okay, so don't take me too seriously. Okay, having said that, I would say the biggest challenge for all of us is to really improve income of the rural people. See, rural have remained poor because urban has gotten richer at the cost of rural. Income distribution does not do justice to rural people. So a farmer would sell onion for $10 or 10 rupees a kg, and it will be sold in Delhi market for 100 rupees. As an example, I may be wrong in numbers. Okay, farmer doesn't get the right price, so farmer remains poor. Okay, so the key is to really empower them to increase their income. There is no shortcut. Okay, if all your income is get sucked by the people at the top, there isn't much left for you. Okay, and everybody should really pay attention to bringing prosperity to rural people.
Right. And I think this is where I've always believed that the fortune should be for the bottom of the pyramid as opposed to at the bottom of the pyramid. I mean, this was a constant debate I had at Soil as well.
Absolutely. It's a very simple debate. There is no debate here.
Yeah.
According to me, there is no debate.
Absolutely.
They are not a market.
Yes.
Okay, they are a resource. Simple.
Right.
Okay.
So that was that was an important discovery that happened for me as well, that it is for them. And that's why I jumped into agriculture and worked with the farmers of India as well, trying to bring agri-tech there and try to solve some wicked problems around pesticide management. A telecom engineer trying to do that, it worked actually.
See, the idea is to take technology to rural. Right. See, technology is not about satellite and computers and IT. Technology is about problem solving. What problem you are trying to solve? Okay. It could be biotech, it could be nanotech, it could be satellite, it could be 5G. And if you don't take technology to solve the problems of the poor, you haven't done your job. You know, one of my favorite sentences that I repeat all the time is that best brains in the world are busy solving problems of the rich, who really don't have problems to solve. And as a result, problems of the poor don't get the right talent.
Yes. And it is difficult in the rural areas. It is difficult. Having seen that for almost half a decade, it is difficult. And there's a reason why the farmers are poor in India. And I think hats off to these new startups which are focusing on that area, bringing technology to rural India and agriculture.
Yeah. Well, Uday, you might want to look at the chat box. Many questions in the chat box.
Yeah, I did refer to a few of those questions, Anilji.
Okay. Okay.
And there is a question from Hitesh Kataria, and a very dear friend of mine, in fact, a soil alum as well. And he is saying that, do you think that in this over-connected and easily influenced world, do we need a new Gandhi to guide us?
Well, I don't know about new Gandhi. I need Gandhi. New or old, Gandhi never gets old. Okay, Gandhi will always remain Gandhi. It's a thought. It's an idea. Okay, and Gandhi sort of emerged out of Indian experience. You know, Gandhi meant non-violence. Gandhi meant love. Gandhi meant truth. Gandhi meant trust. Okay, these are all very interesting human ideas rooted in India and maybe rooted in other societies as well. Okay, but he just packaged it in a way to make it easy to understand. So I think we definitely need more Gandhians. And you could be, you know, I have always said that you could be wearing jean and drinking scotch and still be Gandhian.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. So there is another question, which I think a question which you've answered in a way, but it is about, it is from Sudhanshu, and he says that what should we do differently as a nation to ensure that our core values are based on a culture, embedded in our culture, and we can use that as a strength to change our slow processes or bring research, entrepreneurship, and other things that would ignite the nation?
I think we need to go back to fundamentals. The idea of India that our founding fathers had was rooted in some fundamental values: democracy, freedom, inclusion, diversity, and scientific thinking. We have lost scientific thinking. We are caught up in religion. I made a comment and it got some headlines, unfortunately or fortunately. I said, look, temples are not going to create jobs. So why spend a lot of time on it? Science and technology will create jobs. You got to have scientific thinking. You got to have logical mind. You can't be chasing rainbows, So your main conversation has to change. Your main conversation has to be about inclusion, has to be about celebrating diversity, democracy, freedom, scientific thinking. Then things will happen. Okay? You can't expect to have that old traditional mindset focused on religion, divisive politics, separating people, non-scientific thinking, and then expect things to happen. You take your pick. Option is yours. Okay.
Thank you for that. It's an interesting question. I don't know about the name, but I see it is from, I can't get to the name, but the question is, what advice do you have for transformational leaders like Heidi Lamar, who was transformational for telecom inventions, like how you have been for telecom transformation for India?
I don't understand. Who is Lamar?
Heidi Lamar. No, okay.
Maybe it's
so.
My mind.
Okay. So, your opinion on health reforms in India, and this is someone from this is from Indira Sood, who is ex CDOT and a friend of Soil as well.
Yeah, I know Sood very well. Okay, and good to have him there. He's one of those young guys in early days, who gave his life to CDOT. And there were hundreds and hundreds of those,
So that's Vimal Sood, and the question is asked by his wife, Indira Sood, who was also with
I know Indira also.
Yeah.
I know Indira well.
That's right.
Why not? Good to have her with us. What was her question?
The question is about your comments on the health infrastructure and the health reforms in India. What is your...
I've done a lot of work on health, with friends, especially when Dinesh Trivedi and Ghulam Nabi Azad were health ministers. I had an opportunity to interact and all. It's a very complex issue. Okay, we are following Western model of health all the time. I would like us to follow partly traditional health practices as well. I always tell that my mother delivered 8 kids at home, 0 cost of delivery. We had no doctor, we had no pharmacy, we had no, nurses in the town. They must have done something right. We have forgotten as to what they did right. There's a lot of wisdom in traditional medicine in India. Not that you can avoid surgery. If you need surgery, you need surgery. But before you get to that, there is lots and lots of traditional wisdom. Eating right, exercising, meditation, the use of haldi, garlic, other medicinal plants. Okay. These are all low-cost solutions to prevent as opposed to treat. Modern medicine is only about treating something. It is not about preventing something.
In fact, there's a question from Beena Singh, who's India's first mechanical engineer from IIT. She happens to be my cousin. She's asking, have you read the Bhagavad Gita? And
No.
have you, no, so that's not okay.
No, but I'm not a religious guy. But I know Bhagavad Gita. I shouldn't say I haven't read it. That's a wrong answer. Okay, I've read it in my own way, but I'm not an expert on religion. My wife is.
Okay.
I always tell that religion I have outsourced.
Okay.
My wife and my mother. My mother died. But religious is something I have outsourced in the family. They do a better job, so I don't do it.
Since Gandhiji was so inspired by Gita and he lived his life based on Gita's teachings.
I'm not a religious man.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Go ahead. Uday, the
But
next
they
question.
do such a great job. My wife does such a great job. I don't need to do anything.
Okay. Sure.
It's a complete package, and I think that helps keeps you as a family whole. So I have a question here that I moved from India to US not too long back. You've been living here and you've been in India as well. Do you see some similarities of the issues that these two societies deal with in today's context? Are there similarities? And how could each other learn from it?
Because there are many similarities and there are many dissimilarities. We are both democracies. We both have freedom to move, do what we want to do. We can still speak up. We are not like what is going on in Hong Kong, for example. Okay. So we are very similar in many ways. Liberty. Okay. But we are a poor country. We are at a different scale of development, and US is a rich country because US has 3 times our land and 1/4 of our population. Okay. So they have access to more resources. They have more room to maneuver. Okay. Otherwise, we are very similar. Okay. And we have to learn from each other. If we work together, we can change the world, not just our 2 countries. Okay. But what does working together mean? It has to be as equal partners. It can't be as a poor and a rich nation. Okay. It has to be equal partnership, and that's difficult to forge.
I mean, for me personally, it was it was difficult for me to understand that, having worked in the MCD schools in Delhi and the Delhi government schools, trying to improve the situation, working with right to information extensively in India, trying to and contributing to the right to education as a case study as well, that schools in US like Chatham in New Jersey had to were looked at in that way, that these are the worst schools in the country. And I couldn't imagine that a country like US would even have that kind of conversation going on. It was very interesting for me to note that.
Yeah, true.
So I have a question from Pulkit Nagpal.
Yeah. And that could be the last, Uday, because we are running too close to the time now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So he would want to understand that, how do you live with the fact that you, as in our country, live with the fact with the telecom companies like MTNL and BSNL going in their decline, but still being supported by the government. How to change that, and is that something that the government should be focusing on?
Well, in Manmohan Singh time, we had set up a committee to look at BSNL. You can go online and find a report that 3-4 of us did on restructuring of BSNL. Deepak Parekh and Mr. Verma were with me on the committee, and that report is available, but nobody acted on it. Okay.
Sure. All right. So with that, Anilji, would you want to wrap up?
Yes. Or give me 1 minute, Anil. Yes. Because you had asked me to summarize for the young people.
Yes.
Okay. So I would just take 1 minute and say, my message to all the young people is to really work on improving self. Build a good self. Management books don't teach you that. A self which is more Gandhian. In the modern world, self that is rooted in truth, trust, love, hard work, discipline, respect for other human being. If you build good self, everything else will make a lot of sense. It is not just character. Character is one piece of the puzzle. Okay. Ability to respect other human being, ability to have discipline, creativity, all these things are interconnected. So my advice to everybody would be, young people, focus on building good self. A decent self where you are comfortable with yourself.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Sam, this is music to our ears, because the course that I personally teach in soil and also other parts of the world is called self-leadership. And that's actually what you're talking about. And our 5 pillars of soil: mindfulness, ethics, diversity, sustainability, compassion. These are inspired by Gandhiji. Absolutely. In fact, in 1969, I captained my school team on a quiz on Gandhiji's life, and that I read his book, and that changed my whole life. And soil philosophy is based on that. So thank you very much for this, Sam. I want to attempt to say this is what I learned in your presence today. One, those whole pictures of the freedom fighters which you grew up with, and and some of us also grew up with those kinds of pictures. So Gandhi, Nehruji, Sardar Patel, these wonderful people, Subhash Chandra Bose. So
Maulana Azad.
Maulana Azad. Let's not forget him. Yes, Maulana Azad. So these people's lives became for you the biggest education. And then when you went to the boarding school and the kind of things you learned there, and incidentally close to Sardar Patel's village, and your parents and your father had the vision of giving you that education to send you, saying, I may not have got that education, but my children and my son should get a different one. So wonderful. And then what you chose to do with your life after your physics, to say, I'm now going to go. And there were a series of accidents, but also a series of intentions, which made you become the kind of person that you are. And there you were asking yourself questions on what is this whole aspect of having an honest conversation where you will source curiosity and creativity. Because that whole experiment that you talked about, where you happened to be working in that team and the 4th person, the entire language was you had a curious mind and you were asking new questions. And that made you discover new grounds. And so patents were coming to you because you had that childlike curiosity, and therefore Einstein. And the Einstein whole conversation with trying to understand the world by asking new questions, that helped you to do that. And subsequently, when Rajiv Gandhi invited you, a part of something in your heart stirred, because you said, here is a practical problem. I couldn't talk to my wife. But what would happen if the entire India was to get a solution in your own lifetime, which was different? You chose the challenge which very few people do. And that entire aspect, you give so much of credit to all the young people who worked with you. You never once said, this is what I did. You said, I happen to have a group of young people who believed in the mission. And that power of belief in the higher purpose of why you were doing this, to serve the higher purpose of building the great country of tomorrow, that made all of you do magic. And you remain humble to the point today where now when you are saying and something is being sourced out of you, we have to redesign the world differently. In this world of hyperconnectivity, you said, you need new questions to be answered on the well-being of the planet and the people. And that has to be around the Gandhian principles of serving higher purpose in a way that brings the best out of us. So thank you, Sam. What a joy to be in your presence. Many people said to me, just your presence itself inspires them. So what a wonderful gift you have. And Uday, would you like to say something as our words to round up this evening today?
Thank you, Anil. Thanks for a great summary.
Thank you very much.
I learned something. Thank you.
Thank you. Uday.
So Anil, you wonderfully put it for all of us. And the way you connect is also inspiring, Anil. I think we've already talked about the human capacity that Dr. Pitroda built and unleashed the power of young individuals in those organizations that he worked with. I think that is the most inspiring thing that one can take away from that build or unleash the human potential, follow the principles, the basics, be it the Gandhian principles, be it becoming or going closer to nature to find our own solutions, even of health problems that we deal with today. And I also took away the fact that large-scale change requires a lot of political will. And all these transformations that you were able to build, it was to close cooperation with the government. And I do believe that if we have to bring such change, that will has to sustain beyond governments, beyond people. A very important thing. And lastly, the local self-governance, those concepts of empowering people, the bottom-up approach. It's amazing. I mean, how I understood it using right to information, in fact. And more so in the corporate world, I call it the agile way of working. If you must be knowing the agile and the scaled agile jargons that we use.
We worked on it in Manmohan Singh's time.
I used it in 2004 when I came back to India.
It was a big
Thank
thing.
you. Yeah. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Anil, for providing me this opportunity. Thank you for being in your presence, Dr. Pitroda. We will end this over here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you for joining this evening. And next week we have Motilal Oswal ji also having a new conversation with you. So we look forward to welcoming Motilal ji next.